Britain's Labour government claims it has stopped the export of weapons to Israel that could be used in Gaza. But a new report out today shows that was a lie. The new revelation shows that over 8,000 munitions of war were exported to Israel from the UK from September 2024 to February 2025. I'm delighted to welcome into our new studio Palestine Deep Dive's latest addition to the team, the veteran investigative journalist Matt Kennard, who today published an exclusive piece on this report for Tripartite News in the US. Matt, thank you very much for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
So Matt, tell me more about this report. What are the key findings?
Well, it's a very, very important report because it basically shows that the UK government has been lying to us about its involvement in Gaza. Because in September 2024, which was soon after the Labour government was elected, they announced that they would suspend 29 arms licenses to Israel. It was about 10%, there's 350 in total. They still, to this day, haven't specified what those licenses are, but they said we are suspending any license that allows for the export of munitions or weaponry that could be used in Gaza. But this report shows that 8,630 separate munitions were exported to Israel from September 2024 to February 2025. So it changes the situation completely and means that legal institutions should look into what has been going on, because the other part of it as well is that they carved out a certain place for the F-35 parts. Now, the F-35 is a fighter jet that's been used by Israel to pummel Gaza and Lebanon. And the UK government or the Labour government said, we're still going to sell and export parts as part of that program. But the evidence suggests in this new report, it's not conclusive, but the evidence suggests that actually those transfer of F-35 parts have continued as well. And there was a loophole that they said, which is that it will allow for components of the F-35 to be exported to Israel if they're re-exported to third countries. Now, it seems that loophole is being used. So what it shows in sum is that effectively that announcement, those suspensions, was window dressing. It was to show to the public that we're doing something because it was so obvious and is so obvious what's going on in Gaza, which is genocide and daily and actually hourly war crimes. And I think that they probably said that the Labour, even when David Lammy announced that, David Lammy is the Foreign Secretary, when he announced it in Parliament, he apologised profusely. He said, I'm doing this, these suspensions, I'm so sorry that we have to do this to Israel. And my hunch is that there was discussions with the British and the Israelis, and the British said to the Israelis, look, we have to do something. How can we do this to make sure that it doesn't have any impact on the Israeli war machine? And that seems to be what they've done. But it also would indicate that David Lammy and others have misled Parliament, which is very, very serious, you know. I think if we had a functioning democratic society and we had a functioning media, this would mean resignations by ministers. Because if you lie to Parliament, that's a very serious violation of parliamentary rules.
I would like to know more about the F-35 machine of death, because, you know, I believe that a huge part of the destruction that happened in Gaza is because of F-35 and F-16. And today we know that 61 Palestinians were killed today by the Israeli army since dawn, and we're still like 4 p.m. right now. So tell me, can you explain why the F-35 parts were not part of the suspension?
Well, it's a very good question. And it completely goes against what they said, because the announcement was we will not allow any components to be exported to Israel that could be used by Israel to violate international law in Gaza. Now, the F-35 is one of the main tools they're using to violate international humanitarian law. So it made no sense. Their argument was, the government's argument was, that the F-35 program, which is a multinational program, is too important to jeopardize. So if we suspend our parts of it, which is 15%, by the way, the UK produces 15% of the F-35, then it would have such a huge impact on the ability of the F-35 program to run. In fact, it would have to shut down, that we can't do it. And obviously the answer to that would be, well, it should shut down, because if it's being used for violations of international humanitarian law, that's the whole point of the suspensions. But but they, yeah, as I mentioned, they did this loophole where they said that we can export to Israel if they do it for re-export to third countries, which it seems that they've used to get around it and make it not function. But it's as you say, the F-35 is one of the central bits of technology that's got this genocide done. And it's not just Gaza either. It's Lebanon, which was, as you know, was destroyed in a brutal Israeli campaign. It's also Yemen now. So I think that the important part of this report is that legal institutions like the ICC, where arrest warrants are already out for Prime Minister Netanyahu and his former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and the ICJ, where there's a live investigation into genocide, they should be looking at this report. They should be looking at this complicity and participation.
Let's talk more about the complicity and participation of the genocide, because we know that the UK is now sending arms to Israel to kill the Palestinian people, plain and simple. We know that they are also sending some spy planes to Gaza. I don't know why. You reported a lot about the use of RAF criteria in the spy in Gaza. We also know that the media in the West, the media in the UK is complicit. So to what extent is the British state or government is complicit or even participating in the genocide in Gaza?
I think it's clear, even before this report, that we're not complicit, we're participating in this genocide. If you are providing intelligence to a genocidal power that is committing hourly war crimes, you are participating. Because you mentioned the spy flights, and now the spy flights started in December 2023. They continue to today. And they're over the sky in Gaza for 5 hours. We still don't know what intelligence they're collecting, because the government won't say. We don't know where they're sending that intelligence. We know it's going to Israel, but they won't tell us what departments of the Israeli government they're being sent to. They say it's all to do with hostage rescue. But who, even if you take that at face value, who's leading the hostage rescue campaign in Gaza? It's the Israeli occupation forces. So I imagine that information is going straight to the occupation forces and their intelligence agencies. The other side of it is that there was a spy team that was deployed inside Israel, a British spy team, early in the genocide, and this came out in the New York Times in last summer. And we still don't know if they're there or they've been brought home. Were they brought home when they suspended these arms contracts? The point is the media don't cover this, so there's no pressure on it. It's all about arms, which is why I think that the government's got away with the more important part of its participation, because these arms licenses are important, but obviously Israel is getting arms from a lot of different places, primarily the United States. But it seems that Britain is leading in providing the intelligence for the Israelis to get the genocide done. No other country is sending a daily spy flight over Gaza for 5 hours to collect intelligence for the Israelis. So I think that Britain is a participant. I think that we are missing the point if we just focus on arms. And I think that this report should make us understand that we're still scratching the surface as well. Because this only came out, the information in this report came out from the Israeli tax authorities. It's based on customs data. So there's all the imports they put up online and they register them. On the intelligence side, there's no way we can get information. There's no, you can't use the Freedom of Information Act.
Have you been in touch with the British government to ask them about this information that you got from Israeli sources?
Yeah, so originally when we got the data, I contacted the Department for Business and Trade, which oversees UK exports. And I said, look, we have this data showing you exported 8,630 separate munitions after you said you had stopped. Can you please tell us what these munitions were? To ask them if they had an explanation. And they refused to say what they were. They just came out with a blanket boilerplate statement which said we suspended a certain amount of arms licenses, basically repeating what they'd said in September 2024. And then we also asked about the F-35 parts, which I mentioned, because Again, under the customs code, which shows that shows that aircraft parts were still going after the suspension, it didn't specify it as F-35 parts. So again, I said, look, we've got evidence that you were sending F-35 parts directly to Israel after you said you weren't. Can you tell us what these parts were? And they refused again and just came out with the same statement that they made in September 2024. So it's suspicious. The other thing that's highly suspicious is they never specified what licenses they're suspended. Now, if you're making a great fanfare about stopping certain licenses, you should be open and transparent about what those licenses are, so we, the public, can check that you're being truthful. And if you don't, then it raises a lot of suspicions. But again, it goes back to my original point, which is that I think that this was never intended to have any impact on Israel's ability to commit war crimes, which is what they said it was about. What it was about throwing a little bit to the public to say, look, we're acting here. And actually, my hunch also is that they were getting their own lawyers saying that you could be liable for war crimes if you continue doing this. And if their civil servants are saying this, if the Foreign Office is saying this, then the ministers are probably thinking, well, I need to cover my own back, so I need to say that I'm doing something. But again, it was just window dressing. The other important point is that this happened in September 2024, which was around the time when the British police started arresting journalists. Now, we have no evidence that those two things are linked, but certain journalists who have been arrested and raided, like Asa Winstanley, the journalist for Electronic Intifada, who was raided, I think, in September or October, he's raised the idea that maybe this was part of a deal that was done with the Israelis. Maybe the Israelis were involved in his arrest because Palestine Action also released statements, which they'd got through the Freedom of Information Act, released documents, which showed that the Israelis had been collaborating with the CPS and prosecutors in the UK, which is foreign interference in a legal case. But again, if our government is that infested with foreign state power, Israeli power, there's likely that maybe it was a quid pro quo. Maybe they said, we've got to suspend these licenses, but in kind of to give you a little bit back, we'll start arresting journalists who are critical of Israel, which is what they did. We don't know. But it is very, very, it's shocking. It's shocking that politicians would get up and lie about something so serious. And it's shocking that this isn't a huge national scandal, because although The Guardian did cover the report today, I don't think it's in any other mainstream media. If we had a functioning media, this would be on the top story in the BBC. It would lead news at 10 tonight. You know, the government said that it had stopped exporting weapons that can be used in Gaza, but it sent over 8,000 after saying that. It will never appear on the BBC. And this is why I believe the media are complicit.
As you said, it's shocking. And I stopped feeling shocked for a long, long time. For 18 months, we have been seeing videos and footage from Gaza of people being shattered and destroyed and killed. And still, it is shocking for me now to see that the British government still provides Israel with the bombs to kill the Palestinians, as if 18 months was not enough. Do we know the full extent of the British involvement in Gaza?
In a word, no. We know more now because we have this data from the Israeli tax authorities, but I think we're still scratching the surface of what British involvement is in Gaza. And this is because many of the institutions which have been active in Gaza or Israel over the last 18 months are highly secretive institutions, like the SAS, which was deployed to Cyprus early on in a genocide for Gaza operations, we were told, and then we haven't heard anything since. We have no idea what they've been doing for 18 months. We have no way to find out because SAS is maybe the most secretive institution within the British state. GCHQ, MI6, which are in the major intelligence agencies, what have they been doing? Were they involved in the British spy team which was sent to Israel early on in the genocide and might still be there? We don't know, and there's no way for us to find out. So Jeremy Corbyn is the former Labour leader and now independent MP for Islington North, is calling for a full public inquiry. And I think we need that at a minimum. I mean, I would go further and say we need British ministers to be put in the dock at the ICC and potentially the ICJ. And there's a process of discovery in those cases where they can access information which we can't get, which I think would reveal a whole raft of elements of participation that we're not even aware of. So I don't think we know much at all. And what we do know shows that the government is willing to lie. The report that's out today, that was the announcement was made by ministers to Parliament, and they've been shown to have lied. And it's not; this isn't a small issue. We're talking about the biggest crime a government can do, which is genocide, and this is about our government participating and lying to us about it. So I think that this is going to be years of work, and it's happening now. And I think that what we need is the media to really do its job, because although this report was covered today in The Guardian, I don't think it's been in any other mainstream media. If it was if we had a functioning democratic society, a functioning media, this would be the headline news on the BBC, News at 10. But it won't ever be on the BBC. So if there was pressure on the government to be transparent, it might have to do it, but the pressure doesn't exist now from the media. So I think that's why I think they're complicit in what's happening. But in my opinion, what we see with this genocide is that it's a tripartite genocide. There's 3 countries that are the main ones doing it, Germany as well, but the 3 main ones are the United States with the weaponry, Britain with the intelligence, and Israel getting it done. And this shows that the reason they're so secretive about our intelligence role is because it's active participation. And if they're willing to lie about weapons, they'll lie to us about the intelligence side. And as I mentioned, they always defend the intelligence gathering. There's thousands of hours of flights over Gaza that they're handing to the Israelis. They always defend that by saying it's hostage rescue. Now, this would indicate that just means they can give it to any part of the Israeli state. So I think that we need to understand that our ministers are potentially war criminals and accessories to the crime of genocide, and they need to be brought to justice. And this isn't just Labour, by the way. Labour brought this new policy in 2024, September 2024. And yes, it was a farce and a fraud, but they at least did something. The Conservative government before were doing the same thing and didn't even float the idea of suspending any licenses. And in fact, the report also shows some of the transfers that happened under the Conservative government, and there were 150,000 bullets were sent to Israel in October 2023 when the genocide was underway. Huge amounts, shipments of armored tanks, grenades, rocket launchers went in the months through to January and February. So, like when the worst crimes were being committed, we were sending countless arms and the most destructive arms that could be used by Israel in their genocidal campaign. So the ministers of the previous government need to be held to account as well. People like Defense Secretary Grant Shapps, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, Foreign Secretary. Anyone who had any involvement in the chain of command that was allowing that stuff to happen needs to be held to account, because their argument, I'm sure, if they had to defend it, was we had no idea that what was going on, because eventually it would all come out. But we all saw it in real time. We have done for 18 months. There's anyone who's like conscious and able to string a thought together and could look at their phone for a couple of minutes would see that they were targeting civilians from the start. There was no separation. And like now the Israelis admit that their plan is to ethnically cleanse and annex Gaza. That was always the plan. They said it was about destroying Hamas and use the excuse of Hamas building tunnels under every single civilian institution they did. But we knew that was rubbish in at the time. So we know the ministers knew that as well. So they all need to be brought to justice, because if there isn't justice for this, if our government is allowed to participate with arms and intelligence in a genocide, is allowed to lie to us about what arms we're sending there, then we're in a very, very ugly place, a lawless world where raw power can get away with anything, and there's no constraints on it. And I feel like we're progressing there anyway. And the last kind of resistance to that in the West is to expose the truth. And they're even going after the journalists now who expose this stuff. You know, Asa Winstanley, Richard Medhurst, Sarah Wilkinson. They're not only want to cover it up, but they want to put in prison or arrest or raid the people that are exposing their crimes. So it's a very, very serious time. I'll finish with this. I think it's going to be very interesting to see the reaction to this report, because, as I say, although the mainstream media haven't covered it much, apart from The Guardian, which I kind of assumed would happen anyway, because I'm used to the mainstream media completely ignoring anything about British involvement in Gaza. But there are mechanisms for MPs within the parliamentary system to try to get to the bottom of this. There's ways of holding ministers to account if they've lied to Parliament. So we need to build the pressure for this public inquiry, which is what Jeremy Corbyn's called for. There was one over Iraq, the Chilcot inquiry. It took years to happen, but it was important and showed that the British government had cooked intelligence to take us into war in Iraq. And I feel like the crime committed in Gaza, and it's a British war, like Iraq was, is so severe that we need that kind of huge public inquiry involving all the ministers having to give evidence, involving lawyers having to question them. Whether we get that, I don't know. It's incredible that it's only Jeremy Corbyn really leading this and some independent MPs. It should be the Labour Party itself, because the other thing is the Labour MPs need to quit, or they need to at least speak out publicly against their leadership, because they're complicit in the genocide. It's their government that lied to Parliament. It's their government that sent over 8,000 munitions to a genocidal power. So unless they're speaking out against the government, their own party, which is the party doing it, they're complicit in the genocide. So everyone's exposed, but we'll see where this ends. I am hopeful that the fact we have the hard evidence that they can't deny will put them under some pressure, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Matt Kennard, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks.